I see we share the same company. What can I do for you?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Lore and Loot. Today we're accepting our very last contract from Ida's Fire Eye. She needs us to kill a hunger that has made its home in the Serano ancestral tomb. The tomb is located in the Ascadian Isles region, exactly north of Alof's farmhouse. Now, I've briefly mentioned ancestral tombs in the past, but we've never really discussed them in depth. So while we walk over to the location, I'm going to read excerpts from a book called The Ancestors and the Dunmer. The Family Shrine. Each residence has a family shrine. In poorer homes, it may be no more than a hearth or alcove where family relics are displayed and venerated. In wealthy homes, a room is set aside for the use of the ancestors. This shrine is called the Waiting Door and represents the door to oblivion. Here, the family members pay the respects to their ancestors through sacrifice and prayer, through oaths sworn upon duties, and through reports on the affairs of the family. In return, the family may receive information, training, and blessings from the family's ancestors. The ancestors are thus the protectors of the home, and especially the precincts of the Waiting Door. Mad Spirits. Spirits that are forced to remain in our world against their will may become mad spirits or ghosts. Some spirits are bound to this world because of some terrible circumstances of their death, or because some powerful emotional bond to a person, place, or thing. These are called hauntings. Some spirits are captured and bound to enchanted items by wizards. If the binding is involuntary, the spirit usually goes mad. A willing spirit may or may not retain its sanity, depending on the strength of the spirit and the wisdom of the enchanter. Some spirits are bound against their wills to protect family shrines. This unpleasant fate is reserved for those who have not served the family faithfully in life. Dutiful and honorable ancestral spirits often aid in the capture and binding of wayward spirits. These spirits usually go mad and make terrifying guardians. They are ritually prevented from harming mortals of their clan, but that does not necessarily discourage them from mischievous or peevish behavior. They are exceedingly dangerous for intruders. At the same time, if an intruder can penetrate the spirit's madness and play upon the spirit's resentment of his own clan, the angry spirits may be manipulated. Foreign views of Dunmeri ancestor worship and spirit magic. The Altmeri and Bosmeri cultures also venerate their ancestors, but only by respecting the orderly and blissful passage of these spirits from this world to the next. That is, wood elves and high elves believe it is cruel and unnatural to encourage the spirits of the dead to linger in our world. Even more grotesque and repugnant is the display of the bodily remains of ancestors in ghost fences and ash pits. The presentation of finger bones in a family shrine, for example, is sacrilegious to the Bosmer, who eat their dead, and barbaric to the Altmer, who inter their dead. The human cultures of Tamriel are ignorant and fearful of dark elves and their culture, considering them to be inhuman and evil, like orcs and Argonians, but more sophisticated. The human populations of Tamriel associate Dunmeri ancestor worship and spirit magic with necromancy. In fact, this association of the Dark Elves with necromancy is at least partly responsible for the dark reputation of Dunmer throughout Tamriel. This is generally an ignorant misconception, for necromancy outside the acceptable clan rituals is a most abhorrent abomination in the eyes of the Dunmer. The Dark Elves would never think of practicing sorcerous necromancy upon any dark elf or upon the remains of any elf. However, dark elves consider the human and orcish races to be little more than animals. There is no injunction against necromancy upon such remains, or on the remains of any animal, bird, or insect. Imperial policy officially recognizes the practices of Dunmeri ancestor veneration and spirit magic as a religion, and protects their freedom to pursue such practices as long as they do not threaten the security of the empire. Privately, most imperial officials and traders believe dark elf ancestor worship and display of remains are barbaric or even necromantic. Telvanni necromancy. Telvanni are adept masters of necromancy. They do not, however, practice necromancy upon the remains of dark elves. Sane Telvanni regard such practices with loathing and righteous anger. They do practice necromancy upon the remains of animals and upon the remains of humans, orcs, and Argonians, who are technically no more than animals in Morrowind. And finally, the publisher's note here. This book was written by an unknown scholar as a guide for foreign visitors to Morrowind shortly after the armistice was signed. Many of these practices have since fallen into disfavor. The most obvious changes are those regarding the practice of necromancy and the Great Ghost Fence. Dunmer today regard necromancy upon any of the accepted races as an abomination. The Ghost Fence has forced many changes in the practice of ancestor worship, with the vast majority of ancestors' remains going to strengthen the Great Ghost Fence around the mountain of Dagoth-Ur. There are very few clan ghost fences in Morrowind. The temple discourages such practices among the houses as selfish. The upkeep of family tombs and private waiting doors has also fallen into disfavor, as very few remains have been buried in these tombs and shrines since the armistice. In recent years, most Dunmer venerate small portion of their ancestors' remains kept at a local temple. What do you want? And that's the end of the book. And I find the ending of the book really interesting because part of it doesn't really ring true with in-game events. We'll discuss the Ghost Fence and necromancy in depth later, but now I just want to focus on the part about how the Dunmer deal with their dead. The publisher's note states that most Dunmer don't keep ancestral tombs anymore, but Vardenfell is completely dotted with ancestral tombs. Many of them are guarded by such ancestral spirits as described in the book, those having yet to prove their loyalty to the family. And in fact, many tombs are protected by what we would call zombies, bone walkers, and greater bone walkers, clearly products of necromancy. Additionally, there are fresh offerings in the tombs, flower petals, food offerings, and the like, that at least to me say that the tombs are still visited by family members paying their respects. Yes, some tombs are overrun with vampires, necromancers, and other abominations, but the majority of tombs are guarded by spirits, presumably bound to our realm in order to protect the remains from necromancers or grave robbers. Anyways, we're at the tomb and it's time to go inside. Inside we encounter a new enemy, the Bone Lord. Bone Lords are powerful undead capable of casting drain attribute spells and even carry a decent melee attack. Most of them will also have a soul gem on their remains, but this one didn't. Next we have a skeletal champion, which are tough foes if we let them get the first hit. Now I'm going to clear the main hall before I go into the side rooms. Ahead we have another skeleton champion, and you can see what I meant about them being tough if they get the first hit. Now this is the main chamber of the tomb, and every tomb has a similar chamber. Presumably this is where the matriarch and patriarch of the family are honored. The room here has two more skeleton champions, but we managed to take care of them. The first door on the left has another Bone Lord, so I'm going to buff before I go in there. We'll loot the place after I leave. Now this is the door where the hunger is hiding. This particular hunger is weaker than the average hunger you might encounter normally. It's a quest-specific enemy, and its stats are lower than normal. Presumably he has not been able to feed in a while, so he's weakened? I'm not really sure, but that seems to make sense to me. Additionally, he will not be hostile to you until you attack him, which is also unusual. Anyways, being so weak, he goes down fairly easily. He has the unique Serano helm on him, and now we can loot this place. Listen, it's not that I don't respect Dunmer religion, traditions, and culture. It's just, I'm just trying to be thorough here. Besides, they're dead, and they probably won't mind me taking just a few things. Honestly, most of this place doesn't have anything great. Just some gold and some enchanted trinkets, but for the most part, it's just junk. There is another book here we're going to read. It's a very interesting one called The Book of Life and Service, which, if you have played the expansion pack for Skyrim, Dawnguard, you may find interesting. The book reads, Blessed are the bone-men, for they serve without self in spirit forever. Blessed are the mist-men, for they blend in the glory of transcendent spirit. Blessed are the wrath-men, for they render their rage unto the ages. Blessed are the masters, for they bridge the past and span the future. Now this is interesting because you know that the Bonemen, Mistmen, and Wrathmen are all entities that inhabit the Soul Cairn, the realm of the ideal masters. The rest of the book reads, The Litany of Service, the Bone Man's Oath, we die, we pray, to live, we serve, the Master's voice. You swore to serve your Lord. In the game Battlespire, one of the spin-off games of the Elder Scrolls series, you aid the Ideal Masters after Daedra have invaded their realm. You can actually get Bone Lords to be your allies if you read this book, which first appeared in that game. Anyways, I'm going to circle back over here to where we fought the Hunger. I did miss this Drag shield. Sometimes I say Drake, sometimes I say Drew. I think it's pronounced Drew, but there's no real way of telling. Anyway, this Drew shield, I will sell it because it's ugly, and it's worth quite a lot of gold. And being that it's ugly, the rule of cool applies, so I'm not going to use it. And with that, we are out of here. Now, our reward is 1,000 gold, but more importantly, as I said at the beginning of the video, we are done with Ida's Fire Ice quests. We will now either do the Vivek Fighters Guild, or we will go talk to Perseus, Mercius, and Aldaroon and do quests for him. I think that for the sake of the flow of the Fighters Guild storyline, it's best if we go to Vivek and do those quests first, and then go talk to Perseus, Mercius, and Aldaroon. I mean, there's really no right or wrong way of doing it, but there is a way that you can get more story, and there is a way you can miss some quests. So I'm going to try to avoid that. And so I'm going to go to Vivek first. So thank you for joining me for this episode of Lore and Loot, and I will see you next time.